I'm muted. Thank you for joining us this evening on the Political Deep Dive. I am David Vellante. As we get to the end of Women's History Month, I thought it was a great opportunity for us to do a panel on women in politics. Just 101 years ago, the United States finally did the 19th Amendment. In fact, on March 10th marks the 101st anniversary of West Virginia's ratification of the 19th Amendment. It's a fascinating story if you've never heard about it. Jesse Block, a West Virginia Wheeling Republican, had to train plane automobile across the country for 5 days to be while the legislative leaders of the West Virginia Capitol, the West Virginia Senate, had to do some legislative maneuvers to delay the vote until he got there, and he was able to cast the tie-breaking vote and allowed West Virginia to ratify the 19th Amendment, which it was finally ratified in August of 1920. So, this is a great time for us to talk about this issue. It wasn't just, at that time when the 19th Amendment was passed, it wasn't, not every woman got the right to vote with that. Over the next few decades, women of color, poor rural white women were able to finally get the vote, all the way up until 1964. So our guests span a geographic area, a large geographic area, Democrats and libertarians. Let me introduce our first guest, Kim Ruff. She ran for the Libertarian nomination for president in 2020. She ran for Arizona Inspector of Mines as an independent candidate in 2018, and tried to this year. Mm-hmm. And the legislature wrote a law against you.
Yeah, essentially, what they did is they changed the qualifications for the role. So the way that it was originally written is that it was codified in our Constitution that position would exist, but the legislature made the determination on the qualifications. And even though it's held static for a very long time, now that the sitting incumbent is no longer eligible to run again, they've decided to shore it up and make it exclude contractors such as myself from being able to run for that position. So
yeah. Our second guest is Miss Sammy Brown. Sammy, how you doing?
Hey, David.
Sammy is a former West Virginia delegate, an awesome person to boot. So, and one of my favorite people that I've worked with in West Virginia, and I'm so happy to have her on the show with us today. And let's see, our next guest is Miss Jennifer Moore. Hi, Jennifer. How you doing?
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Jennifer is the elected auditor of Upper Providence Township in Pennsylvania. She is also the Auditor General candidate for Pennsylvania in 2020, and currently running for state chair of the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks. Yeah, that's right. I'm currently the Eastern Vice Chair, and I've served for 3 terms, so looking to run for chair this year.
Jennifer has many hats. Our next guest is my favorite sister, Cara Valente.
I better be.
She is my only sister, but even if, well, yeah, she's my favorite. So. But she was a candidate for New Mexico House of Representatives. We don't have delegates in New Mexico, so which confused me this week. I thought it was, I called her a delegate candidate. No, she was a House of Representatives candidate. Ran against a member of the Democratic leadership in New Mexico in the primary in 2012, right?
Yes. Okay. And received 44% of the vote.
Yes.
Awesome.
And we'll get into the specifics of why you got into that race and what happened afterwards. So.
Sure.
And then our final guest should be and Cara as well, are no strangers to people who watch the deep dive. Miss Emily Hurtley from Illinois. She was Kim Ruff's campaign manager in 2020, and an all-around awesome libertarian activist and awesome friend. So thank you all for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure.
All right, so let's we'll because I know our time with Kim is a little bit limited, so we'll start with Kim on this one. But the question is for everyone. what started your political journey?
Well, a lot of it came down to the fact that I was GOP upon graduation from high school going into college. That was what my parents were, and that's something that was very ingrained in Arizona anyway. But with that and the way that we had shifted to being more preemptively war-based, particularly with the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the stance that the Republican Party took on social issues like GLBT rights, I didn't think that that was an appropriate fit. A friend of mine suggested the Libertarian Party. I read the platform. That really spoke to me. And then when I graduated from college, I got involved and started working there. So I'd been doing it for about 12 years at this point.
Awesome. Looks like we lost Sammy to West Virginia internet. We'll get her back. West Virginia internet is no joke. It's so gangster. It'll just snipe you at any time. So we'll go with Jennifer. What started your political journey?
Well, I was Republican, and I worked on some big campaigns back in 2006 or so, and I left the Republican Party around that time because they were not small government, and I just didn't fit in. So after that, I stepped away from politics for years. It's a very jealous mistress. It takes up a lot of your life. And I decided, I actually decided to put my career on hold for a few years and stay home with the kids because, just all the things that moms deal with, the price of daycare, the long hours of management, it wasn't worth it at that time. So as I'm bored out of my mind as a stay-at-home mom, I started, following the Libertarian Party. And, more and more, I started thinking to myself, I want to get involved. So in 2017, there was the Mid-Atlantic Liberty Festival happening around the same time as our state convention, which that fell apart epically, but it was enough of an event to draw me in. So I went to the convention. I had a really good time. I started going to county committee meetings. I said, I'll never run for leadership. I'll never run for office. Within a year, I was elected to office. The following year, I was elected to the XCOM. I didn't want to be involved with politics because I knew that I would go overboard like this. But here we are in 2021, and we are where we are, and I'm happy that I got involved. So.
And you never want to run for chair, but you're doing it too.
that really is the truth. Chair is the most thankless job in the party. It's not a prize. It is absolutely an obligation. But, to keep our team on the trajectory that we've been on with our huge growth and our election wins, I feel like, somebody just has to take the bullet and do it. So Here we are.
I always say that, attend libertarian events, win libertarian prizes, which usually involve jobs and responsibility. So,
and our collective ire.
Yes.
How dare you help us?
Right.
Sammy, how about you? How did your political journey start?
Well, to be honest, I'm not sure there was a time I wasn't in politics. It's interesting that I had that mentality of, I'm not, this isn't my space, or why would I run for office? But frankly, my first protest action was at 8 years old. I protested for Title IX, and recently, I was an organizer starting at 17, and then we kind of had a throwdown here locally in Jefferson County, and I was the go-to girl. I was the person that folks called to, be the cavalry. In particular, 2018, or at least the final straw for me, was there was a Confederate monument that the county commission looked to preserve, I suppose. And the conversation around it wasn't one around historical context or even anything that was like around preservation. For me, and again, being in this space for as long as I was, it was dog whistle politics. It was all like very thinly veiled hate rhetoric. And so when I went to testify, the commission president interrupted me multiple times because I wouldn't back down, because naturally that's who I am as a person. He screamed to have the bailiff remove me from the room. And then when I wouldn't leave the room because I committed no crime, I did nothing wrong, I merely was there to tell.
Oh, shoot. It's a good story.
No.
Damn you,
So
West Virginia.
invested.
as a reminder, if you're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, or anything, if you want to make a comment, we'll be happy to post those as we go along and talk about them. There she is.
Oh,
Coming
good.
Coming back.
Good.
I can't deal with these teasers.
Cliffhanger.
Now we'll see how good she is at picking up where she left
There we go.
off.
Go, Sammy.
There she is. Yes.
Man, StreamYard.
It's West Virginia internet.
I don't
It's,
know. Is it? I was gonna say,
Yeah.
is it? Am I coming through it all, guys? I'm.
I can see you.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think where I left off is. Are we connecting?
Yeah.
Yes.
I can see you.
Mhm.
You're frozen.
Frozen.
Oh.
Let it go.
I hate West Virginia now.
Better?
The entire state.
Not better.
You're good.
We can see you now. Okay.
Oh.
Well, let's go with
Right.
Care Bear. Care Bear, how'd you start your political journey? I know the story pretty much.
You do know the story. Well, back when the Earth's crust was cooling. Let's see. Well, my first political action was writing to President Nixon when I was 4 in crayon about how the cartoons were preempted and I didn't really want to hear his voice anymore. And he did write back, which was to his credit. But I am, I think, only liberal here on the panel.
Sammy's liberal as well.
Oh, right on, Sammy, wherever you are. In 1988, we had moved to New Mexico the year before, and I remember with David, I've always been kind of keyed in, but watching with David, our dad taught us to watch the conventions, both Republican and Democrat, every year. And so I always watched from the time I was a toddler. And so I was really familiar with everything, and I was very interested, but didn't feel like we grew up in North Carolina where there's, not much room for a liberal, and at least there wasn't in the 80s. And it's very hard to get involved in politics there. But when we moved to New Mexico, it was very wide open. And David and I remember watching the Democratic Convention in 1988, and I was very excited. And Jesse Jackson really spoke to me. I knew I had to get involved. I knew it was something I had to do, and I've been involved ever since. I ran for state representative in 2012. I was in my first year of law school and had 4 kids, and our mom wasn't very well, and I was her primary caregiver as well. And so it was a challenge. It was really difficult. And since then, following my heart politically has been difficult. I had been pushed into running by an organization that I was involved with, and they kind of bailed on me. I realized very quickly that they had put me in to punish and to send a message to our state legislature. And while they weren't going to help me in any way, they used me for that purpose. And then after that, I got involved with the Bernie Sanders campaign, and he was incredibly popular here, but I had a falling out with our former lieutenant governor and some other political people here, and because I supported Bernie Sanders in the primary and basically assaulted our lieutenant governor in a way that former lieutenant governor that made things pretty unforgivable for me. I have 30 years of political consulting um, background had basically become unhireable in the field. So it's an interesting game and profession. And now I teach. So there's that.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the things I want to talk to you about is the price that you've paid for challenging a party leader and a person that said something really kind of awful, and the price you paid for doing the right thing, for holding your leaders to account.
I don't regret it.
That's awesome. And I don't regret driving 20 some odd hours across the country to come work the last few days of your campaign.
That was the best.
That was fun.
That was the best.
Damn, I lost Sammy again. So this is a group question. What issues do you think are unique?
Do you want Emily to answer your first question?
All right, yep, I did.
Emily?
That's okay. I'm a woman in politics. I'm totally used to being overlooked.
Damn it.
We need to tell
Good
your
answer.
vagina to speak up. Yeah.
I'll just sit here and look pretty.
Yeah.
Well, and I hate to be anticlimactic, but my story is a very gradual one. I grew up in an apolitical family who leaned Republican, but we didn't really, because of the family dynamics, politics was not a luxury we could really afford. And I spent a lot of my youth volunteering, and it was something that I really grew to be passionate about. And in 2015, I was watching Penn and Teller's Bullshit with my then husband. They found a way to get me turned on to politics, and I said, okay, it's time for me to volunteer again. I think I'm going to go volunteer for the Libertarian Party. And I reached out, found Michelle McCutcheon, who she was like 2 blocks away from me. We were practically neighbors, and she brought me in. And it was just history from there. I ended up being very involved in every state that I've lived in since then. So very gradual, but I'm here.
And you concurrently manage 2 nationwide campaigns.
I'm also a little bit insane.
Honey, we all are.
Sammy, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I have no idea where we left off, but
Okay,
you were
so you were
getting
being
pulled out of
told-
the big meeting. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're getting
good.
okay, cool. So, I was so at the time, it was the bailiff, and mind you, this all went down in my hometown, and the then commission president wanted me removed from the room for the egregious offense of finishing my 2-minute statement, and when I wouldn't leave the room, when I sat down in my seat, there were no dramatics, there were no theatrics. There was someone from the back of the room that shouted to tase me. Yes. So, mind you, at that point the rooms erupted. I knew it. I knew right then that we were going to be that night's news, and all I was there to do was to testify on behalf of my community. And mind you guys, I'm an introvert, so I know that doesn't read, but like this very much was like my nightmare.
Yeah.
So I leave the commission meeting. At that point, the commission is stacked, and again, contradictory to popular belief, I'm not exactly hyper partisan either. I would definitely be considered a disruptive candidate in my own party, the Democratic Party. But by the time I got home, there was already a mass email from a group that then referred to themselves as the Liberty PAC. And they referred to me as radical, hysterical Sammy Brown. And then the rhetoric and the threats started to come in. So then, of course, folks start calling and they're asking me, Sammy, are you okay? What do you want to do? And at that point, I took one good look at the feedback. I looked at the craziness that was being, reported by the news, and I just said, you know what? To help, they've just launched my campaign. That's not
girl.
Government.
Good job.
Mhm.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
So we launched the campaign that year. It was the insurgent campaign. There wasn't a lot of money to be had. There were a lot of people that gave me the old pat on the back and said, "Good job, kid. We like you, but." And while they would give, big fatty checks to my contemporaries, if you will, around me, I was notably getting markedly less. So I decided. I built out my field plan because prior to this, I was a field director for labor and for a number of national entities. So I locked it all down, built out my own field campaign, and I knocked 125 doors every day but Sunday for 90 days straight to reach my win number of, I think it was 4,500 people. And by the time that whoever it was that decided, they're like, I think this kid might be onto something. When they polled, they're like, oh my God, she might pull this off. And that's when the checks came. But prior to that, there was no help to be had. I had no volunteers. Wasn't this big machine. It was Sammy Brown, a calculator, and a field plan. And I just refused to lose. So that's really how we kicked off, I'll call it the political career, where I became, if you want to call me a politician, because I do think that the David Valente can attest to the fact that I stuck out like a sore thumb in the West Virginia legislature. But it was deemed the largest comeback in the state's history. It covered over a 30-point spread. And you could tell that was the case because 2020, all of the vitriolic focus was on the 65th, all of it. Yeah. So, we had the character assassinations. There's the dump of money. There was, everything from she hates Christians to she has lesbians running to her campaign. She's a terrorist. I mean, if you can dream it up, they said it. And we'll probably get into that a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get into what's the worst thing you heard on the campaign trail.
Oh yeah, but
I'm sure a lot of you have good stories on that one. But this question is for everyone. What do you believe are the unique challenges for a woman on the campaign trail? We'll start with Jennifer.
On the campaign trail, I haven't really had any problems. I was elected to office to township auditor. I had to overcome, a Republican ballot challenge, but there wasn't, anything that my male colleagues don't have to deal with. The same with Auditor General. It was more of a paper campaign. I had a lot of other obligations and I had the qualifications, so I ran. But, the media was very fair and unbiased. Again, they didn't ask me any questions that, the male candidates didn't have to deal with. It's more the inner party, within the Libertarian Party where I've had issues and difficulties. And I think we'll probably get to that later. But as a candidate, I know that other people experience it and I've seen it, but it has not been my experience. I've been very lucky and I'm very grateful for that.
Sure. All right. Who else wants to go with this one?
I've had the exact opposite experience. So there's good and bad. And let me start with the rough stuff. And then we'll kind of segue into the good stuff. The rough stuff was me not unbiased. It was very clear that from the time that I was elected to even present day, there is something called the Journal Junction,
Yeah.
where they can print anonymous complaints essentially. And for several months within my service, it was Sammy Brown needs to resign. Look at radicals, hysterical Sammy Brown. Look at her social media, and they would print these. There was a journalist, and I'm not gonna give her the satisfaction of naming her, but she would screenshot my social, take it out of context, and give it to the extremist group in the area, the hate group in the area. Then when they were calling me a terrible representative because I just refuse to toe the party line on both sides. Like, if I vehemently disagree with you and I don't think you're running on a principled approach, I'm not going to vote with you. And I did this on both sides of the aisle. So did that piss people off? Yeah. But was it the right thing to do? Absolutely. And so, as a journalist, you probably shouldn't be engaging in hate posts, but she was. I remember when she asked for my profile for re-election, she asked very slanted questions. And I told her, I don't feel comfortable doing this with you. There's definitely a different focus right now. And in particular, I know that you want to talk about my re-election, but what I'm most focused about is we're in the midst of pandemic. And there's a lot of stuff going on, ranging from folks are displaced, they can't eat, they don't know how to function within the rule of law. And frankly, we had an issue of powers of authority, which I also was involved in on the Committee on Judiciary. So there was a lot of push and pull there. I experienced the full breadth of the ugly rhetoric, from extraordinarily racist to deeply misogynist. There was a point where they referred to me as a stripper, and I'm still not sure why. You'd think that would be based on something, but again, guys, I can't dance. So, I mean, yeah, when we were touching on this a little bit earlier offline, I passed 8 pieces of legislation, 10 if you count the subcoms where they took my bills and ran them in the Senate side instead, and then 11 if you count where leadership blatantly pulled my bill on third reading to make sure it didn't pass. To continuously go with this, she's ineffective, she's stupid, she's a weak incumbent, she's this, and it's like every time we proved you wrong, you doubled down on it. So that's the ugly stuff. But the positive to that is when you experience that type of thing, you're onto something. You don't put that kind of heat and energy and resources into trying to tear someone down if you don't know that they've built something that is a threat to what you want to achieve, which is, personally, I think it's very biased, predatory power. And I've said this often, but I will definitely say this with this crowd. I don't believe in conservatism. I'm not here to conserve the way things have been. I don't believe in centrism. I think that's a code word for weak spines. But yep. I am here to tear down the system and build it so that it actually works for people. And if you're scared of that, well, you should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we're all down with that. So, all right, Kim, what do you think?
The worst thing that happened when I was campaigning.
Talk about what the unique challenges of being a woman on the campaign trail. What do you think?
Okay, can I answer this in tandem with Emily, since she was my first person on the. Okay, when we were running for president, I think probably the biggest thing is establishing credibility. that is really something that you struggle with anyway. And I think it might be more so if you are a woman. And that was the same thing true when I ran for state mine inspector. I actually had people say silly things like, besides being a woman, what qualifies you for this role? And I'm like, technically being a woman doesn't qualify me for this role. But yeah, you do spend a lot of time in order to combat that. You become a subject matter expert on everything, because that is the big thing that's challenged. Guys can get away with a lot, basically bullshitting their way through stuff, but as a woman you're expected to, they challenge everything you say and your credibility, so you do have to do a lot of research and really know your stuff. I think in terms of running for the Libertarian Party support, I think one of the most frustrating aspects to me were people that I worked with and who knew me and my work ethic and my background and experience, and then automatically turned on me just for having the temerity to cast my name out there as someone as a candidate for president. That was most devastating, because they were people I considered colleagues and friends. And I thought at the very minimum, they just wouldn't kneecap me. They didn't have to necessarily support me. They just shouldn't have gotten in my way. But these people actively went out of their way to spread vile, vicious rumors about me and things that could potentially destroy my personal life and my professional life because I chose to run. So that was really frustrating. And then Emily obviously saw a ton of it because she ran all of our stuff. So Emily, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I think one of the most vicious things that was done was to attack you as a mother with completely unfounded rumors. And it was done with the express intent to get you to stop running.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, there are dumb things where you get asked stupid questions that would never be asked of a man. Like, who's going to watch your kids if you get elected? Nobody asked Barack Obama who's watching his kids if he got elected. I mean, it's understood that you're going to have support and people there that will help offset those things. But that was definitely a question that was asked. And I do think your parenting comes into question, as well as your sexuality and sexual habits. Those are way more focused upon. And so that is a really difficult line to walk as well.
I can't tell you how many times her genitalia was commented on. I mean, and for what?
I really hate that for us, though. I feel like our sexuality is always part of the conversation. Always. I mean,
always.
If you don't see our partner, then you start speculating. I don't.
Well, even without a partner, it's just the way that we look. All of us have put on makeup and done our hair and looked nice, because if we don't, we aren't taken seriously. Right. End of story.
Well, to be fair, this is my main. You guys didn't get me with done hair today.
Wow, because you're scrubbed wrong.
It's really amazing the people who spread these rumors too. They're not close enough to you to have any idea. Like, I mean, the people who spread this stuff are just making things up out of thin air. I mean, people you haven't talked to in a year, or 2 years.
I promise.
And, all of a sudden
it is someone. I promise you it is worse when it is someone that you are closely related to that does that. And I had a close relative who actually wrote a letter to the person I was running against and told some things that were private and some things that were not true. And then another family member thought it would be fun to let me know that this person had done that, and out of a point of being mean because he didn't agree with my politics. So it's much worse when because I had it come from a not family member as well, and it was awful, but and just terribly awful. But it was much worse when it was the person I was closely related to, even though I knew that relationship was not good. I never dreamed that he would do that.
As leadership, I've had those calls come into me, like as party leadership, talking about our candidates from family members. And, it's never easy. They want to call you and talk about the affair or whatever. And, as a leader, you have to hear them out, but then you can usually mostly write it off. I mean, it's politics. People act that way, unfortunately. Mhm.
So are these people going to be at your house or get at your family get together for Thanksgiving? Because we are all inviting ourselves and we are going to make it weird.
These two people will never be at my house again.
Yeah.
It's
Good
just
boundaries.
Understandably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope you forgive me. I have to go, ironically, to go pick up my kids. But thank you so much for the opportunity. And you
Thanks so
ladies,
much
you
for
take
coming on.
care.
Yes.
It was so nice
Thanks
to
to you,
meet you.
Kim.
It's nice to meet you too.
I love Kim. She's awesome. She's one of
I
my
adore
every
her.
time- Every time I talk to Kim, I had this big smile on her face. She's just so positive and nice, and it's great to be able to talk to her. Great to be able to see her again because she's left the Facebook reservation and is doing.
I can blame her.
Yeah,
She's a phenomenal woman, and every time she opens up her mouth, I learn something.
Yeah.
It's an honor being her friend.
Okay, so what is the worst thing that somebody has ever said to you on the campaign trail or in your political career?
Kim
I was
was
canvassing
made fun
for-
of.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Kim's
And please pardon this vulgarity. It does not come from me. But Kim had her cavernous vagina talked about. Yeah. But it was misspelled. He spelled it cavernous. So it's a running joke now, like if we just say, you think your mouth is moving, but it's actually your cavernous vagina just flapping in the breeze.
Isn't that the best when the insults become the joke? That's happened to
Right.
me recently too. Like,
And
God
that's
bless
how you should treat
libertarians
them.
who just they have like made the insults into just like comedy.
Yes.
So
And it is a joke.
is that why she wanted to be mine inspector?
We did joke about that a lot. I
Wow.
mean, who's
Wow.
more qualified to inspect
that's just-
holes?
Like all the things that
Wow.
people say, like, why are you pointing that out? I mean,
Disagree with her
we'll get-
policy or something.
We'll get
like,
into it a little bit later about
right.
being better to everyone on the campaign trail or within your political life. But all right, Sammy, what you got?
I don't want to bring down the vibe after
Do it.
the caviness. The cave. A mailer, like I'm ready for office because anyway. So the one that bothered me the most was because I'm interracial. I'm obviously of mixed race. They came into question, like it was kind of like a birtherism conversation. It was really bizarre, but basically I'm not really Black because I'm mixed. And so the statement was, if Sammy's Black, then what part of Africa is she from? And that kind of like sent me over the edge. So that was pretty shitty. The other one was during while we were protesting this heinous corporation. I did get arrested for civil disobedience. So I guess maybe I was asking for this, but because we had sat down to block the roadway, there was someone that said that they should use my body for a speed bump. That's the best.
Ugh.
That
I just need to stop you. Being arrested for civil disobedience has absolutely nothing to do with such a horrendous comment. You did not deserve that. No one deserves that. And good for you for sitting down, for fuck's sake. I'm sorry.
No, I
It's
love it.
infuriating.
I really love this crowd. Normal people.
Me too.
Yeah. Right.
But those are the two that really stick out to me right now. Obviously, like after we lost, the whole she's most known for being a stripper. Really, I was like, I'm not sure why that's your flex. I just don't get it. But I guess that would be my holy trifecta.
Jeez. All right, Jennifer. What I know you're getting all kinds of crap from running for Pennsylvania State Chair. What's going on out there?
Well, it really, the first few years in leadership was, pretty easy. Like very often I was the only woman in the room, but I never really noticed. I think that once you rise to a certain level, I don't know if you become a threat or, it's really been the past year or so. A lot of women in politics talk about unwanted advances. That has not really been my experience. Maybe it's because I'm, a middle-aged mom with a financial career. When I was elected township auditor, I did get a couple of unsolicited pictures because township auditor's so sexy.
Yeah.
But but that was easy. I just blocked those people and we moved on. It really started ramping up, I don't know, maybe a year ago. And it started kind of slowly. Like, when I say something of substance, I would get, that they didn't like. I would get things back like them changing the subject to, oh, you look so pretty and your accent's charming. Just disregarding what I had just said. From there, and that went on for several months. But then, after we got to the point where I announced for chair and things started, getting a little bit rough on that front, just vicious rumors about my personal life, things that, again, from people who don't really know me enough to know what's going on, attacking me during board meetings, to talk about, affairs and, things that are just, the information is completely misconstrued and wrong. And the worst part is I get feedback that, these people are going to meetings at the county level and that people I considered my friends, like this is turning into like bash gen sessions at county level meetings all around the state. And it's like, that's the hurtful part when these were people you considered your friends and they're, getting involved in this. But, and I was talking about this a little bit before the show, as a woman in politics, you can't react because if you do, you're going to be labeled as hysterical. You just, even in a normal debate, you have to be very aware of that perspective. The nice thing is, 95% of the people around me, do jump to my defense. They shut it down. They don't want to hear it. But, I imagine it's only going to get worse as time goes on. And then come the comments about how I'm not going to be able to handle the pressure of leadership and things like that. And it's like, I've been handling the pressure for 3 years. These things go on and I don't react to them. I watch, the people around me react much more poorly than I do. At the end of the day, you just have to let it roll off your shoulder. Every moment that I spend focusing on that sort of negativity is time that I could be being productive. I could be organizing a county. I could be helping libertarians get elected to office. I could be helping someone get on the ballot. My time is very precious. I have a full-time career. I work in healthcare revenue cycle and management. I have 2 young children and a husband. I'm involved in, their Cub Scouts, and I have, my elected position. I'm an officer in the state party. Like, I just don't have time for that nonsense. So you just compartmentalize it and, you just... And the same thing goes for being chair. In meetings, we need to maintain decorum.
Yep.
And that means no personal attacks, no attacking people's motives. That stuff just should not be allowed. And anything that people want to say behind the scenes, I just hope that my actions and my integrity speak for themselves. And, some people are going to make their own determinations based on rumors and gossip, but, you just keep trying to do the good work and, not letting it affect you. You have to have a thick skin.
Yeah. So we've got a fan, I think. Mrs. Thatcher will be turning in her grave listening to this drivel. Mrs. Thatcher can turn in her grave. That's fine. Set her on a nice rotation.
What about what we're saying about our personal experiences is drivel? And this is kind of the whole thing. It's so easy for people to try to dismiss us by saying, oh, you're just so pretty, or, what you're saying is complete nonsense when we're not even talking about anything other than our own personal experience. How dare you try to dehumanize us?
Yeah,
we're not even saying anything of real substance other than experience.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten to that part yet. So.
Right, exactly.
The main thing is our male colleagues often don't have to deal with the things that we're dealing with. I've helped them on campaigns and it's not like this. We're just attacked on completely different subjects, and a lot of them have to do with our femininity. And I really want to show up to the convention in pink ruffles and announce these colors don't run. Because, it's just one of those things.
This show is to highlight some of these issues. If Margaret Thatcher was available, and I'm sure she dealt with the same issues that you guys dealt with.
Absolutely.
Like you can't say that oh well, because we didn't see her talk about this on a show that it didn't happen to her. We know that this stuff happened. So and that's why I wanted to have this show and why to have this conversation, because this does happen. And the people that are watching this that may be feeling uncomfortable right now, you should be. That absolutely should be. And you should be correcting your ways. So but anyway, Care Bear, what about you? What was the worst thing you heard on the campaign trail or in your political life here?
We caught her chewing and she's on
mute.
mute.
Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. I have so many to choose from, and I've been thinking the funniest one was being out canvassing, cold spring morning, hippie neighborhood, and there's this sign in the yard and it says namaste and flowers, and it's just lovely. And I thought, oh, I'm so excited, a kindred spirit. And I knock on the door, and the bat out of hell that I unleashed, that's what she sounded like.
Yeah.
She saw me and she said, "Get off of my property. I'm not voting for either of you bitches. Just don't come back to my house ever again," and slammed the door in my face. And I was like, well, fucking namaste to you too. Like, that was the funniest one. The worst thing that I had happen during my campaign, besides the personal issue, my ex-husband's union, who had agreed to stay out, like not get involved in the race, got involved in the race, and they spent $100,000 on an 8-page tabloid, basically calling me a puppet for the Republican governor, who I couldn't stand. That was awful. Living with that was pretty bad. And that was what just devastated my campaign. It happened about a week before the election.
So tell everyone about why you ran for state house.
I was living in, I think I must have had some sort of mental breakdown, because it was a crazy thing to have done. I was living in a house district that I had lived in off and on over many, many years. And I knew the woman who was representing us pretty well from many campaigns going back to 1988. So I'd known her for a number of years. At the time, she was the House Majority Whip and had served the district for 18 years. However, she was less than responsive when it came to neighborhood groups. She didn't respond to any emails or calls. And, New Mexico is not a state where you can really be out of touch on that kind of political scale. You have to have some connection to the voters. Yeah. And so she had just kind of become entrenched and not very she was effective in one area, and that was for teachers, which I am now. She was a favorite of the teachers union, and they worked very hard to keep her in office, but that was not the union that came out with the tabloid against me. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I had been a part of an organization that trains Democratic women to run for public office. And some of the information is really outstanding. very good, field stuff and dealing with campaign work, training you to make the calls for the fundraiser, training you to make the ask. And then some of it was also superficial, like blunt your sexuality, but you have to be much more polished as well. And, it was image creation. And there's a place for that, for sure. But people in that organization, high in the organization, called me. It was the first day of my 1L exams, and I was getting ready for my contracts exam, and got the first call. But I got several calls. The ones that really resonated with me were people in my neighborhood. A leader of the IATSE Film and Television Sound Union. He contacted me, and several other leaders in the community, and asked me if I would run, because Cheryl was not responding to calls, emails, was really only representing the interest that had gotten her into her position and not her voters. And so I decided I told them I'd think about it. And I came home a few days later to my daughter being very ill, and she ended up spending Christmas holiday in the hospital. She had her appendix rupture. And during that time, I thought about it, and I decided I was going to run. And I did. It was lunacy. So that's why. That's why. Is there more?
Well, what about the statement that Cheryl said on the hot mic?
Oh, that too. So people were pissed off at her generally for a number of years because she'd become so entrenched, but she got into an argument with a Republican legislator and said that she was carrying water for that Mexican on the fourth floor, meaning the governor, and which was, as a woman of color, she knew better than to use a person's ethnicity against them. And I'm not a fan of that governor in any way, but it was the wrong thing to do. And so that was what caused people to finally say, okay, we're going to try and run someone against her. But the party, I think, really encouraged me to do this or elements in the party because they wanted to punish her and to show her that there was a reckoning. So I got 44% of the vote, and that kept her from holding her party leadership position. She was demoted within the legislature. She has since risen again. And I will say that since I ran against her, she became a very effective communicator, at least for a time. I don't live in that district anymore. But she has worked hard to earn the trust back of the voters. And so, yay.
Hey, that works. We've got a couple of comments from Nalik Trupp. She says she's an engineer and has plenty of experiences to speak on the subject. Absolutely. I know that, especially in the sciences industries, that, the sexism and the misogyny and the barriers there are significant. She also asks, and I don't believe any of you were pregnant while campaigning.
Mm-mm.
I was not, but I especially with the frame of the question, it's not a story I really talked about often, but I did have a miscarriage early, and I had actually considered maybe that I should roll this back because clearly I'm not. Maybe I'm not healthy, maybe this isn't the right thing to do, et cetera, et cetera. And it carried through in the campaign because, I was tired. I definitely felt burned out. And then because it's something that I I want so badly. I want so badly to be a mom, but I'm younger than most of the other candidates, and certainly none of my colleagues could really empathize with this at the time. Um, there was this constant conflict of, will I be able to have a personal life if I'm in public office or if I'm considered this public figure? So to answer this question in particular, I I don't think that being pregnant or being a mom is in any way a hindrance to your want or desire or effectiveness in service. So please do not even make that a factor. It really is for us about proper planning. It comes down to shoring up your support system and whoever that is for you, your partner, your family, your friends. But there's absolutely a way to balance both. And in my ripe old age of 30, I'm figuring this out for myself. But I've seen women do it. I'm honored to have women who, with their pregnant bellies, come knock doors with me. I'm so honored to have them. But it really just goes to show you the resilience that comes with, doing it all, because we're badasses. So especially if you have a heart for service, please don't let that be a distraction or a detractor for you. It absolutely can be done.
On
I
the
tell
other
kids-
side of the coin. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go for it. Oh, okay.
No, I was gonna say, I tell candidates all the time that when they're unsure about running for office, that just the willingness to serve is enough to qualify you for most local offices. You should absolutely go for it. And depending on the local office, it can be anything from a full-time job to a 1 or 2 day a year commitment. So please don't let that stop you. I have 2 young children myself, and I wear all these hats. They roll their eyes and say, "Are you talking about politics again, Mom?" But at the end of the day, they probably understand more about civics than most elementary age kids. So we need more people who understand the constraints of having a family to be in those roles, and that perspective that you can bring to it is very, very important.
I agree.
And I am not here to disagree with anything that you guys said, but I will just give a personal anecdote. I was working a 40-hour-a-week job, and I was running 2 national campaigns. So it's a little bit different than running a local campaign, which I have also helped with. There is a very real possibility of burnout if you aren't careful. If you seriously want to run a campaign and you're worried about the amount of time that will take, plan before you do anything. Just make a detailed timeline, build your team well in advance, so that when you have those moments of, oh my God, I'm exhausted and I need to take care of myself, you can say, hey, team member, could you please do this for me? You just delegate. There's no shame in accepting help.
Absolutely.
And running campaigns, you've got to have.
We're asking for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with that more.
Yeah.
I think a lot of folks, when they start thinking about running for office or what service looks like for them, they have one idea of it. And what I think is like the really great part of this panel is where we've been on different levels of service, different levels of campaign depth and acuity, and there's various ways to show up right now in movement spaces, whatever your movement might be. The fact that you have a heart to serve, in my opinion, is very much the qualifier. We need representative government. We need folks that are in this space for the right reasons. And really what it comes down to is knowing that we have these factors in our lives, in our personal lives, and maintaining them. It just really goes back to the previous comment. Plan for your purpose. Like, if you want to get this done, get it done. And, in my case, it was knock 125 doors a day to get it done. And if that's not feasible for you, or if your plan looks a little differently than that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. You're doing it right for
Right.
your faith. Just know that the work ethic and the purpose still has to be there, regardless of what your circumstances are.
So, politics aside, what does it mean to have a woman vice president now?
Anything's possible.
It's a good feeling.
What's that?
I said it's a great feeling.
Yeah. For so long, we got to see, or at least, sorry, David, but I'm just gonna throw you under the bus here.
All right.
You guys have gotten to see what's possible for you for centuries, right?
Yep.
Like, you had the embodiment of what is available to you, what power is available to you. Where for women, we've constantly had to make this ourselves. We've had to consider it ourselves, and not only that, but have to combat rhetoric about, our drivel, for instance, when we had the audacity to dream that I too can do that job, and to see a woman of color. I've said this over and over again. I will fight like hell to hold you accountable for your policy, but let's not mistake how awesome that moment is to be able to see what's possible for every woman, every child, that the barriers are suddenly getting torn down.
Yeah.
Politics aside, and Dave knows my personal opinion. It's pretty cool to see that society is starting to accept women in politics enough that they have allowed a woman to be in that role. I wish. I'm sorry.
I know it's hard because I know that we have the policy disagreements with her.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, and it's not just the policy disagreements. It's I don't feel like it was anything other than political machination that she got that role.
Mm.
And I wish that it had been something of more substance. Because hell, I mean, if she's in that position, well, and
if she weren't fully qualified, like Sarah Palin, that was political opportunism.
You don't think that Kamala, her appointment was political opportunism?
I think that there was opportunity in it, but I don't think it was opportunism necessarily. She was fully qualified for that position. She ran for it herself, and she was doing very well. We
just discussed how the willingness to serve was the qualification. So I mean, where does the qualification suddenly change? And
yes,
is it
willingness to serve is a qualification, especially for lower office. But when you're talking about someone who has run for president, they certainly are qualified for the office of vice president. Constitutionally speaking, yes, but also her resume bore her out, and she was a likable candidate. Now, I wasn't voting for her in the primary. I've said it before. I'm a Sanders girl. I voted for Bernie Sanders both times, but she was high on my alternates list, much higher than Biden was.
Mm-hmm. I have to agree with that. There's a lot with Kamala in general. And again, full disclosure, I'm overtly progressive. You really can't accuse me of being your standard issue Democrat. It's not possible. But and so there were a lot of trappings of some establishment pangs, if you will, with Kamala. So I definitely see where you're coming from. And the mechanization. I will also say that the draft for vice president may have been one of the most genius posturing moves of the establishment I have ever seen, because what that was purely and truly was to elevate the profiles of those women in establishment spaces, right? So before, they couldn't break through, and then here was this individual who used what I cannot describe as anything other than privilege to get them to be a topic of conversation. Suddenly these women are trending topics or hashtags. Like it wouldn't have happened prior. And again, that has nothing to do with the resume, their policies, et cetera, geographical location. So
Sure.
there was a machine here and present for this particular scenario. So I get it. And you're not wrong. But where I do feel like we might diverge is that here is a woman that over several years in her service, I watched her get the chinks in her armor because she was this high-powered attorney, and then she came in to be senator, and then she ran for president. And that campaign, although it started off with a lot of steam, and there were folks like from the full spectrum of the political aisle, if you will, that either loved her or hated her. And that's another thing. There was no warm feelings about Kamala. It was one or the other. It ultimately created a bit of a downward trajectory for the popularity of that campaign. So there's a lot of interesting mechanisms that I'm sure we could get into in an entirely other podcast.
I think next week open. So
yeah.
It's really hard for me to separate the policy because some of the things that she has done historically are the reason I'm a libertarian, because I just don't agree. It does really bother me to see, the attacks on like past personal relationships and things.
Yeah.
The reason being is because there are plenty of policies to attack her on, and that's what you should stick to. Right. Rather than, she slept her way to the top or whatever. That stuff does get under my skin, seeing that happen to someone. But like I said, it is difficult for me to separate the two because I'm a libertarian for very specific reasons. And some of the things in her political resume they really bother me. So
yeah. I hear that.
Yeah.
I definitely hear that.
I think women are fabulous and we are so underrated. We have been for so long. And I wish that when a woman rises to power, it's because she has earned it and that she isn't being used. And I feel like she is absolutely being used.
I don't think so.
I mean, I'm not saying that she's not also using. Don't get me wrong. I think she's all about the power.
She's too smart for that. I think she's too smart for that.
Is it smart or is it power? Like power playing?
There is a presence of tokenism right now in all movement spaces, and that's
thank you. That's a good word that I was searching for. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's happening. It's very real. It's apparent. I think we could debate this one in particular, but I know that it's happening. I'm watching it happening. I'm fighting it tooth and nail because you're right. If we're going to have these spaces and we're going to have folks like really emerge as not just representatives and political figures, but also now being representation of whole communities, being able to carry the voice, and then also to really show that marginalized communities are not a monolith of ideology. Like that's also deeply important here. It does bother me to see how how our presence gets used. I've seen it happen with my own campaigns, with my own service. I've watched as like people I don't even know latch themselves onto what they think my values are, and there's so much more complicated than that. I've seen where folks really did not understand my pursuit of criminal justice reform, not in the least. And then really, I've seen the projection of implicit bias when when I'm going after initiatives that are rooted in social justice and equity, how it's being turned into something completely different. It really is, how are we creating spaces that are truly tangible for all of us to be successful, to rip down again these systems that have oppressed so many people, and not just one community, but have kept the poor and have kept the most powerful safe and secure. So I get it, and I know that these are systems that are constantly being perpetuated. And I can say that and be critical, and also acknowledge that there is a woman of color who is in the highest office in the world.
Rebecca?
I have to go.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you so
I'm
much.
sorry.
Thanks,
I
Kara.
apologize. If
It's
I
family.
hadn't, they're sending me back into the classroom tomorrow. So it was nice knowing all of you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Good night.
Love you, Kimber.
I love you too. You guys take
Good night.
care. I wish I could
Good
stay
night.
on, but have a great time. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye. Let's do this
Bye-bye.
again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Listening to you talk, one of the questions that we often get in the liberty movement is, why aren't there more women? And that was something that, in one sense, I always say that you don't see as many women in politics, period, because it is just a soul-sucking, jealous mistress, like I said earlier. But then I think about, the way that people have talked to me on board meetings, and, I just, wonder, if you're a new woman in the room and you see a female leader being attacked like that, what do you think? How is that perceived? And, we do have a lot, especially since the Jo Jorgensen campaign. We've organized several counties that have female leaders, and it's so good to have them among our ranks. It's a lot different picture in the LP than it was 3 or 4 years ago, at least locally. I hope that we're going to see more female activists step up, and that there's a lot more of us in the future. I can't, really answer, why there aren't more of us. There are getting to be more of us. It's just, it's a tough situation sometimes. If I saw some of the things that are being done to me when I first came in, I might have turned tail and ran,
Well, and I agree. We within West Virginia, we're seeing the number of women getting involved in the, signing up and getting, our state coordinator for Jo Jorgensen, Jennifer Fisher, she moved to Huntington from Rhode Island, was a godsend. And we're just, Tara Jane Sheffer and, Erica Kalenich, our gubernatorial candidate. We've had a really good run, and I'm excited to see continue that growth and getting quality candidates, not just men candidates, but women candidates as well. And we, looking at the Congress, 5 to 10 years ago, and it still is to a great extent today, but it was it's an old white guys club, and we're starting to see that recede a little bit. You're starting to see not just Democratic women getting elected. We had a great wave in 2018, but you're starting to see a lot of Republican women get elected. I'd love to have some libertarian women join that group, but we are starting to see a tide turn, I think.
Yeah.
And when you have the people that representing all different, whether it's people of color, whether it's genders or whatever, that there are in Congress, we get better laws because it's written by people who are of that experience.
Absolutely. One of the other things is, when we talk about these things, I feel like people say, you're just playing the victim, or, and I want to say, here and now, that most of my day is not spent dwelling on this stuff. I think about it very rarely. My activism, I don't think about the fact that I'm, a woman, and that's one of these things, rears their ugly head, and then I brush it aside and I keep moving. This isn't something that I dwell on day in and day out. Not to minimize the experiences, they're very real. They happen, but most of my colleagues are wonderful. They support me. I'm still here in the role because, it is mostly a good place to be. you have to deal with, people that you don't like, and, people who say negative things, whether it be, in your workplace or in politics. You just have to get along. And, sometimes it's not nice, but the majority of my day is not, negative, like the things we've talked about here.
Sure.
They're just things that have happened, over the years.
Well, and I think that's absolutely a part of, I would say it shows a symptom that it's so easy for people to forget the humanity of whomever they're listening speak. Yeah, we're women. Yes, we have opinions. Yes, we're activists and doing things in our community for our community, but there's a whole heck of a lot underneath the surface that we don't show. And so it's easy to forget that we're just humans at the end of the day. We're no different than your mother or sister or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that really was the purpose of the conversation, is that human component, and we don't get to talk about those things, right? I just kind of harking back to earlier in the conversation when we were talking about, when we enter into the room, when we enter in any of these spaces, we have to come with our policy stances, our how, the plan. I mean, we have to come equipped with these things. And so when we get to have these conversations, when we're on stage, when the mic is on, we're going right in to how we're going to make lives better, period. How are we winning this? Because that's what we have time for. And then when we have conversations like this, and it's kind of in retrospect, we do get to share a little bit. We do get to talk about some of the experiences and the conditions that we're working under. And you're right, it's not all bad. But it's also not sunshine and rainbows right now, which also goes to why we have to ask that more folks get involved, that these spaces are more diverse, that we have women that are service-minded, that are heart-driven, that are going to be steadfast and badass in their principles, because the only way that we can protect really the asset, if you will, of strong leaders is making sure that there's a pipeline of leaders to back her up.
That's right. Yeah, most other than my inner circle have ever heard these stories. So, it's interesting to go out here live and talk about it, because, it's things that we don't talk about, but they happen to all of us. And I didn't even go into the specific nitty-gritty details of it, but, those around me who are watching this understand, and they know the circumstances. And any female leader out there who wants to, have a glass of wine and, laugh about these people, I'm game. Because we all need that too,
So is there anything else you guys want to add, or if you want to talk about that situation, we certainly are all ears to laugh at these people as well. But anything else from you guys?
Really just, if you're in earshot, if you're listening to us today, you're needed. You're needed right now. And it doesn't matter what part of the political spectrum you affiliate with. Again, if your heart's in this and you know that you can do better for your community and make sure that there is a warrior that fights for them in all spaces, you are absolutely needed right now. And please take this as your call to action, and we'll help you.
We don't do any of this because it's easy. We do it because it's important.
Exactly.
Well, I'm gonna brag on each of you for a second. Sammy Brown was my favorite legislator to work with in West Virginia. The fact that she was always on criminal justice reform, she was always doing great cannabis work. The work that she did in West Virginia was so important, and it's such a missing voice in that state legislature right now. And I pray that you're getting back into it in 2022, and you're gonna have a volunteer right here. So
Sammy, this is the first I've really talked to you, and I'm blown away. I just think you are incredible. I sent you a Facebook friend request. I'm like, that's a woman I want to know.
I agree.
I've known Jennifer and I've known Dave for, but like you just came in and just rocked my world. So
You should.
good job.
You should accept her friend request because she just like posts tons of great animal pictures.
I post a lot. Feel free to mute me.
Like, yes, we will do this.
If you can put up with me on Facebook, then she can put up with anybody on Facebook.
I know it.
Yeah, David's got some strange videos out there.
Yeah.
If you do another thing with the Spice Girls, I'm going to lose my mind. Stop it.
Those ones are my favorite.
Those are awesome. I love that. That and the Marilyn Monroe one is pretty. Actually, I
That
really
one's
think
good,
a
too.
really nice Bollywood actress. Like all the Bollywood actors, are phenomenal. So, but Jennifer is running for a state chair of Pennsylvania. She is one of the hardest working people in the Libertarian Party. She gets shit done. Why I'm using that term. She today, this weekend, has been spending her valuable time getting people on the ballot to run for these offices. She's running her state chair campaign. She's Eastern Vice Chair. She's put in the work. How many affiliates have joined in the eastern part of Pennsylvania?
I'm working on number 10 right now. I hope to have them ready for the April board meeting. So
Good
there's
job.
one more that I don't know if I'm going to get it done in time, but yeah, I've got 9 under my belt, one more, hopefully 10 by the time I step away from Eastern Vice. And honestly, my region is mostly organized.
And honestly, that work is amazing. That's what will help the Libertarian Party be sustaining well beyond our involvement. Getting those local affiliates, getting that base built, the Moulton maneuver of filling off,
Yeah.
getting people into office and experience and building a bench in Pennsylvania will make this a powerhouse party in years to come.
And the Moulton maneuver that he's talking about, in 2019, we elected 47 libertarians to office, which is a big deal because there's only 225 nationally. Bonnie is awesome. She's one of my favorite people. She worked on the Jorgensen campaign, and she came to me, and I just, I was managing a paid petition drive. I had like a dozen petitioners in the field, and I couldn't handle these volunteer requests. And I was introduced to her, and I'm like, here's this load of work. I didn't even say hello. And she just picked it up and ran with it. And now she's the chair of Lackawanna County. They're one of the newly organized affiliates, and she is just wonderful. But, getting back to the Moulton maneuver, we elected all those libertarians in 2019 by, using some quirks of Pennsylvania law. This was Dr. Moulton's, brainchild, and I used the process to get elected myself in 2017 and vowed to help him. I'm not sure that they expected what happened when they turned me loose on the project.
Yeah.
Because I just went nuts, and I just I put my all into it. But now we have a process, we have it down. I think in 2021 we'll win 100, maybe 150. I think that you're going to see libertarians elected to local office. We just have to keep our team on this trajectory. And that's why I'm running for chair, because I want to see these counties organized. I want to see these people win office, and I want to support all these new activists who have come to us and, teach them these processes so that we can become, a political movement that can compete.
And that is why
I definitely want to learn what you have.
That is why I wholeheartedly endorse you for chair of Pennsylvania.
Oh, thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing you at the convention.
I will be there, and I can't wait to see you guys in Pittsburgh and have a good time.
I'm so impressed.
Well, tell Mr. Sheets I've got 2 bottles of Everclear for him.
Oh no, don't ever drink Steve Sheets lemonade. He puts Love Potion number 9 in it. I'm not joking. I had a U.S. congressman drunk on this stuff. It's never worth it. Don't drink the lemonade. I'm not even joking.
Jim Jones has the Kool-Aid. We have the lemonade, so it's all good.
We have the libertarian lemonade. It's bad. He's watching this and laughing right now. I know he is.
I know he is. Yeah. But again, thank you all so much for joining us this week. This has been a fantastic conversation, one that's been needed. And I wanted to close with something, but it almost feels like I'd be mansplaining what you guys have been talking about for the last hour and a half now. It's just, guys, if you're watching this, it made you feel uncomfortable. Good. Adjust your behavior. Learn to disagree without being disagreeable, and discuss policies, not personalities. And that's how we get better. And again, thank you all so much for joining us this weekend. I will see.
It was a pleasure.
I know, I love it. I love it.
I will have to get it. I'm not sure what I'm doing next week. The Libertarian National Committee meeting is most likely canceled next week. Usually it's my week off if we have an LNC meeting. So I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing next week on the show. I might just do an after hours show or after dark show if you guys want to join us.
Yeah. It's a multi-partisan, just getting wild. I mean,
yeah, even wilder than that. We're not talking about cavernous vaginas or anything.
We can talk about the policy stuff we don't like.
we really should dig into the policy. I'm living for this, so let's do it.
All right, I'm not going to do an after dark show this week because we ran long in this one. But thanks everyone who watched us on People for Liberty. Again, if you're interested in getting involved in the Liberty movement, if you're watching it on Facebook, you already know about People for Liberty. But if you're on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, People for Liberty is a great organization that you express interest in liberty issues. We're going to plug you into those groups that kind of feed where you're passionate at. And then if you are a content creator like myself, they give a platform to those people, give them tips and things like that. So again, it's a great organization. I can't thank them enough for having covered me while I've been on my Facebook ban for my Dahmer picture. And hopefully, I think next week I might be off, but maybe another week before I'm off my Facebook ban. But again, thanks to the People for Liberty folks, and we'll see everyone next week. Take care, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on the Political Deep Dive. We air every Sunday night at 8 p.m. on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. Thanks to People for Liberty for airing this episode on their Facebook page at People, 4 Liberty, Inc. You can find me on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter with the handle of Papa Duke, Papaduke. Our Facebook page is the Political Deep Dive Podcast, all one word. Our Twitch handle is DT Valente, DTVALENTE, and our SoundCloud is The Political Deep Dive, all one word. We will see you next Sunday night at 8 p.m.